No Better Place to Die, Battle of Murfreesboro, also called Stones River. And it's funny, I looked this up when I saw Dead of Winter, when I first thought about buying it a couple of years ago. I think it was on sale. Well, maybe a year ago. And I decided against it because I'm like, well, I have one tactical battle. Now I'm assuming it's on the regimental series, or regimental level rather than the brigade level. And I've been picking up regimental series games for whatever reason. But, you know, I didn't really want to do a lot of coverage on a battle that's kind of this, in my own collection, not just on video, that's not terribly well known. This is a smaller Civil War battle compared to the monsters that CWB really works best at, the Gettysburg, Shiloh, Antietam. However, this is a long battle. In fact, it's sort of two battles, to tell you the truth. One that happened on December 31st and one that happened on January 2nd. But the armies stayed in contact throughout the entire period, with maybe some skirmishing, but not much. Anyway, I was going to set it up fully, but I haven't done so yet, because I kind of wanted to point something out. With these CWB games, I find it useful. One side sets up before the other. Now, in this case, I didn't even know which way it was the Confederates were going to be coming from. I didn't realize they're across the river from the Union position. And so I set my Union units up in stacks. Now, the setup orders say something like within 1 hex or within 2 hex of this. And I just stack them there. The Union's got to set up first, and then I wait until I set up the Confederates, many of which were deployed fully by the rules. And the rest probably didn't matter too much. I would actually say it makes more sense to set up the Confederates first, given that most of them are actually spelled out. I also wrote down my orders. I'm using clean order sheets for both sides on this one. So, what do we got here? A battle I don't know a whole hell of a lot about, because there's no historical notes in this game. Unlike most games in this series, they didn't spend a lot of effort filling that out. There's some designer notes about it, but it's winter. That's the first part. And you can see the map is, once again, one of these more muted maps that I prefer for the CWB series. Once you start getting too many colors on the map and the board, it looks like somebody really did something disgusting. Okay. A couple of things to note. They got rid of the casualty and artillery ammo track. The artillery ammo track is especially lacking in this, rather sadly. They probably could have pieced it together in some places, but they chose not to. You know, the normal way they do the graphics is this big block that takes up a hunk of the map board. And there just wouldn't be room in this. It's another one mapper. So I'm going to have to keep track of artillery ammo expenditure on paper, I guess. Casualties don't really matter. Special rules. Okay, so we've got Rosecrans in charge here with the Union. And remember, Thomas had been given the offer of this army. But after he refused it, when Buell was removed after Perryville, well, Rosecrans was given command instead. Kind of a slight to Thomas, but you shouldn't refuse opportunities when they're given to you, I guess. We're going to... Okay, the Union has only one corps in this game, but they're divided into 3 wings, left, right, and center. And those wings are going to have full corps capabilities. They're going to be treated as if they are corps in this role. This is the way you do it. You know, you treat the wings like corps, even though they're ad hoc, and if need be, make some special rules to shift units between corps. Not having corps headquarters in the system just does not work as written. You'd have to make a lot more rules to have things work that way. And They didn't in games like Three Battles of Manassas and what was the other one? In Their Quiet Fields that we faced recently. They didn't give you anything for that. Union Cav is going to be treated as a division. This isn't really too important here, which can be given orders directly by the Army commander or assigned to a corps. All the Union Cav units have plus weapons. All right. We haven't dealt with plus weapons before. They use the parenthesized values on the firing chart, which just indicate, the higher rate of fire means more casualties probably. Let's see if we have anything else here. We have attachment, detachment rules. We have the Pioneer Brigade over here, and it has its own attached artillery. It's basically a separate little command that can be given orders directly, or it can be attached to a corps. The artillery has to stick around with it. We have Walker's Brigade, the 1-3C. That's not on the map yet. That's coming in as a reinforcement. We got 4 days here. Not a lot of reinforcements, though. One big stack right at the beginning of Union troops, and then a few that come in later in this day and then tomorrow. Let's see. Walker is an independent unit directly under the command of its corps headquarters. It'll normally remain within range of the corps, but it can be given a detached goal, a divisional goal. It can be attached, etc., to a division. There's an option that brings the rest of that command into play. Obviously, I don't like to play with the optional rules, but this game is kind of interesting because the core campaign scenario for this is sort of a what if anyway, and we'll get to that in a moment. Then we have a string of little variant options that can be bought for points. Confederates, we got good old Braxton Bragg back in command. Some special rules: the Cav division can be attached or given orders directly from the Army. Jackson's Brigade is completely independent. I don't know if that's on the board. That's back here. Jackson's Brigade is completely independent and can operate without orders as it likes. Units that have that ability are just powerful little features. They basically must indicate a tremendously capable commander. Then some more Confederate units to be added into the game, if you wished, including an option to replace Bragg. And they replace him with Joe Johnston, give him a 3 rating in the game. Dean kind of hems and haws about that, but what it comes down to is, hey, come on, do you want Bragg at a 1, which is the core option for the game, or do you want, and Johnston as your option where you get him up to a 2? Okay, but there's another option to the game. This is the more historical option, which is let's put Bragg and Polk and give them leadership values of 0. Feeling is, well, that's going to really hamper the Army, and there's no question it will, but that actually more accurately reflects their abilities in this battle, where they kind of, let things down as usual. Victory points in this one are going to be assigned for a combination of terrain, and oh boy, do we have a lot of it. So the bridge here, 2601 is the next one that's listed, which will be down here. Basically, from what I recall, I've played this before, I haven't hunted them all down, but basically anything going off the map and any important looking crossroads are worth victory points. And they're worth more victory points, they're worth different victory points to the 2 different sides. And they're worth more victory points to the guy who shouldn't have them. That's a pretty standard feature in these. And then you have victory points for casualties. If the Confederates get one of the variants, they'll be taking casualties they'll take casualty victory points or give them at the same rate that the Union does. The Union Army's a little bigger, and as usual, the way they handle that in victory points is to, skew it in favor of the guy with the bigger army to make him less likely to. We've also got points for wrecking particular units in any given command, and that's also a pretty standard factor. They're only going to be permanently wrecked units in this game. I know in Perryville we had temporarily wrecked. Well, you've got 4 days to fight this out. The situation should be determined after those 4 days, more or less, for what's going to be going on here. And then let's see, we got a number of scenarios as usual. Some in the December 31st, which is really the first day of the attack, a couple of smaller scenarios. And this is one reason why, you don't need to buy one of the teeny tiny games. A game like this, which is fairly small, provides you with some pretty small battles here. 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., a 5-turn battle. That is gonna go in just a few hours of play, so that's not bad for a learning scenario. And then we have another short 2-hour battle here. Then we have the whole first day covered as a battle. Then we go to, hey, nothing happened on December 30th. As the Union was arriving, the Confederates could have struck at that point, but they didn't. The first day battle, what do we have here? Bragg comes forward with an attack. So the Confederates are launching their attack pretty much with the troops they have, although they are awaiting some additional troops on day 2. But they pretty much have what they have, and there's very little here for the Union. Well, not really. There's a big pile coming in, so I don't know. I don't know how much of an advantage it is to launch the attack early. Maybe by waiting around, you can convince the Union to be so bored that he'll attack during the first day. I sure would try it. I like sitting around and doing nothing. And then we have a full battle running from that choice on December 30th all the way through January 2nd. And we have some special rules here. We, of course, have the ammo. And it looks like a lot for both sides. The Union has 200 rounds. The Confederates have 175. Some orders, which, man, the Confederates have some defensive orders in place, which largely just makes it harder for them to get moving. But the Union has no orders in place, which means Rosecrans is going to have to start issuing orders to get things moving. The special rule has to do with Polk's Corps. Chatham and Withers up here have intermingled their commands, and they're allowed to command each other's troops until they kind of either fix that or Polk's army gets better orders. So basically, as long as you're in this situation where they're trying to hold this territory, that's what they have. Now, we have some interesting defensive orders here, like the PCAV. Move to and defend the right flank of the army. Before I saw this game, I had no idea that an order like that would be legitimate. Everything I had seen had been very much geography-based. All right. I'll finish my setup, and we'll probably get this started and rolling tomorrow. It's getting late tonight. And pretty straightforward battle otherwise, though. Well, after considerable foot dragging of my own, it's time to get to Bragg's foot dragging. And I'm going to actually start the game. The Confederates get the first move here. We start off in twilight turns. It looks like visibility range is 3 in the dawn turn, actually, not twilight. Twilight will be the same, and then 8. Got some immediate problems to look at, one of which is this McCown's command down here is not with its core, and it's going to have to start walking up there. I'm also going to look into gathering people at Bragg's headquarters to start writing the orders. I'll probably write one order a turn. You can get away with that even under the 3.0 rules. As long as people are willing to come to you, it's fine. And that works pretty well because it doesn't skew the game too much, but it gets rid of kind of the silliness of the commander just riding around everywhere giving everybody orders. They have to assign orders to move their headquarters. I've also taken the liberty, I don't do this with many games, to put victory point locations right on the map. You know, I figure I'm never going to sell these suckers. And if anything, you know, it helps the game for me considerably. Most of the locations are on a per hex basis, and then I don't have them parenthesized. The one exception to that is up here. All of Wayne's Hill is that 3-0. I'm assuming it's just the little spur sticking out of that rise there. Get the highest ground up here. It's kind of a shame. I look at the points right now, and the Confederates I don't think are sitting on any points. The Union's sitting essentially here on 2. They got 3 more somewhere else. Up there. Under here. Yeah, there's 3 more points down there. So they have 5 points. That'll give them a marginal victory. So it's up to the Confederates to do something. Now, if they grab this, it ends up as a draw, and that's almost assured for them initially. So it's not clear which side should be attacking. Historically, the Confederates attacked, and historically, there's some grumping about the fact that they didn't attack on the 30th, although with this huge force coming in at 5:30 a.m., I'm not really convinced that it's their duty. On the other hand, I'm also not really convinced that it's not, in the sense that, well, the Union has points right now for a marginal victory, and I'm not really thrilled with the command, with the position I'm in for a defensive command. I'd have to reorganize my forces. So I think I'm probably going to aim for an attack. We'll see if Bragg can pull it off here. Thomas is obviously, or sorry, Rosecrans is, well, maybe not so obviously. Rosecrans is a better commander. I'm not sure how much I trust that 2 rating for Rosecrans, because he was actually pretty effective at getting his troops moving. Maybe not the greatest commander in the world, but it's almost like he had overly complicated plans more than that his men just absolutely failed him, at least my reading of history. All right. So we'll see how, at least on an operational level, he was very fluid, but maybe that's correct on a tactical level. I'm not sure. I simply do not know enough about the man. All right. Well, I guess enough foot finishes my Confederate movement with these forces sliding up here, and Hardee coming over to talk to Bragg. But it does bring up one thing that kind of bothers me, which is if we look at Breckinridge here, I think he's got everything in command. His range is only 4 movement points. 1, 2, 3, 4 there. 1, 2, 3, 4 for his overall. But what worries me here is something that's always troubled me with the game is reattaching units. By the way, I noticed in the 3.0 rules, I'll get to that in a moment, but reattaching, when you detach a unit, you have to send specific orders to detach it, but it doesn't really discuss, as far as I can tell, how you reattach a unit and whether I can make that part of my orders or an initiative for, say, Hardee, to try to engage in that. Now, I'm going to be writing orders to try to coordinate an attack. It's not going to happen now, but next turn probably, where there's going to be some delay as to how long I want the Confederates to await their movement. Probably send Hardee across upon the beginning of an attack by Polk, because I figure Polk will probably screw things up more than Hardee does. There's a problem with that. There's a procrastination rule where, I don't remember how long, 1 hour, I think it's optional. Yeah. So if the orders are meant to be taken into effect in an hour or less, you can start rolling them. But if they're conditional on some other unit moving, you don't know if that's going to be, an hour, or if you're going to be just waiting there for a long time. That's kind of a disturbing thing. I feel like if the units are in waiting for something to happen, or if they get moving, for example, I might give orders to Hardy to move forward, attach himself to Polk's right flank, and then move forward in conjunction, perhaps even supporting an attack by Polk. Although probably I do want these to be separate orders, not supporting orders completely. Well, then that whole procrastination thing becomes a little twisted, because I'm allowed to kind of bend the rules on that. And that's, in a sense, how I managed, say, my victory at Austerlitz with the Allies, was by giving people coordinated orders all off one corps. So, or wing or whatever, I don't remember how things are divided there for the Allies. It's a mess. But in this case, yeah, if I'm awaiting some action by Polk, in a sense, the procrastination doesn't really have the effect that it's desired. And I feel like I'm kind of bending the rules there. But on the other hand, that's what I really want. Not to bend the rules, but I really want Hardy to, say, move up into position for an attack and then launch the attack in conjunction with Polk, and not to do so before Polk's ready to move. Is that cheating? I don't know. I can see where some people would read it as, oh, no, you just can't do that. And that would make an explanation of why you would never have a coordinated attack. I don't think that's realistic, though. Just from my understanding of the Civil War, among other things. And also from my reading of how the rules are handled, I don't think it's what's intended. I feel like the procrastination is actually kind of there as an add-on that didn't quite fully get fleshed out. So what was the other thing? When I was talking about leaders bolted down, it looks like the, divisional leaders, it looks like the series rules for 3, they half solved the problem. I don't know when they did this. They may have done it earlier than that even. You don't have to actually stack with a unit. You're bolted down and face an emergency division retreat. But that means that your leader cannot actually be of any use to the units. And again, I see that as a real problem with divisional commands. I'm willing to take that as wow, that sucks for a game where you choose to use divisional commands. I'm not willing to accept it in a game where the command structure is forced upon you, like some of the ones which do not have the core structure. All right, well, we got a pile of Union reinforcements coming in. And yeah, I'm back to I had left these charts in Perryville, and the rules had made their way back where they belonged. I'm really bad about that. So we're going to be getting these guys in at entry hex B with orders in D2 status, which can't enter the Moor. They're going to be entering on B, advancing down Wilkerson's pike, and taking a defensive position right of C2 astride the pike. So this is C2, so we're going to be defending this line here, and that'll get us that location. But we're in D2, so I'll have to write those orders out and try to figure out what the hell else to do. The Union certainly isn't going to attack until those troops are in place. Those orders were pretty easy to write. Take up defensive position. Position to right of 2C and astride pike. I think that's sufficient. Now, I've pulled both my corps leaders who are on the map back to talk to Rosecrans and get orders. I want defensive orders there. I do not want to give ground if I can help it. We may be here for a long time while Bragg tries to issue his orders. without much happening. D2 means I'm going to be rolling every turn for a 1. If I don't get a 1, those units aren't coming on the board. So if Bragg gets a jump on things, he could actually push the Union back enough that he could grab some significant victory points and take a generally defensive position. Seems like a good idea. Yeah, let's see if Polk can move. On the other hand, with Polk, I've written orders, once Hardy is to your left, commence an attack on Wilkerson's pike down to 2010. We're at the 7 a.m. turn by now. Nothing exciting happening. Now, to me, that does stink of procrastination there. I'm not going to be able to roll until I see Hardy moving. That works fine. Of course, I'm going to be rolling on something like the -1 table because our 2 leader ratings are 0, +2 for the impersonal verbal, drops it to 1, drops it down to -1. I'm not willing to put any force into orders because with Bragg around, that's going to throw anti-initiatives. I've got 4 days to fight this battle. Now, if I recall anti-initiatives, they may come back during the day. I know certain things with the commanders come back at the end of each day, but I want some flexibility if I'm launching an attack. Since nothing starts until I launch this attack, as far as I'm concerned, unless the Union's crazy or that big stack comes in and does something, I don't see any real reason to try to push these orders along. It's not any kind of emergency situation. Too exciting by the 8 o'clock turn, except for I realized, I got some guns up here in range of the Union guns over here. Let's do some counter battery fire if we're going to be attacking. We want to soften them up. I don't have a lot, but, And that woke the Union up and they fired back. Given that that I have games of the system, I pulled out the Perryville map and counters to track ammo on it, so I don't have to cope with trying to write it all down. I don't see much point to that. It doesn't sound like fun. Onward. As we move to the 8:30 turn, we see some things are actually happening with Hardy's division. Corps, I think, moving itself into place over here to take up position. Now that means I can start rolling for Polk, seeing that Hardy's actually moving. It took less time than I thought, but with the delays, I think it was right not to start rolling until I saw him moving. The guns got chased off the hill. I actually compounded my infantry there to prevent from getting any stragglers, and that's what got them chased off the hill. But it's for the best. They took a disordered result, so that's not very useful. Nothing else really changing yet. Where am I on time? I think it's time to send this one up. There's nothing happening yet, obviously, but I think things are going to start very soon. So, since we went through the setup and everything, this is long enough.